It is time to engage. Only on Discovery this week, though, because network TV gives you breaks here and there, and it's unfortunate because, God, these shows were perfectly in sync. They would have ended on the same night, at least in Canada, and that would have been beautiful. But the Orville had a break a couple of weeks back. It had another break this week. So we've got, by the looks of it, 4 more Orvilles. I was mistaken last week. 4 more Orvilles, 2 more Discoveries after today. So let's get into Discovery 209, Project Daedalus. It was an interesting one because we got a little bit of death. And we don't always get death on Star Trek. It happens rarely. And so the way they handle it on this show really tells us a lot about what kind of Star Trek we're watching. Vanya, did you see Ariam's death coming?
I had a feeling, just because of how they set up everything, like it was like almost like a goodbye. They built up her character so quickly in the episode that it was suspicious that, I thought maybe that could happen. But, we thought Sarah would bite it too, and he's still there.
Yeah.
So who knew?
Sonia, did you feel like it was going to be coming, and did you feel like it was a modern take on how to kill a character?
I too thought that scene where she put the vial, she took it out of hiding, the vial in the picture of her previous life, and the fact that they did show her memories. I thought that there was something serious was going to happen with her for sure. I thought it was a very compelling take on the death of a character because the character was so struggling so much, right? And she actually was a victim of someone or something as well, and so it was. I felt a lot for her. I couldn't dislike Ariam. I couldn't be pissed off with her for what was happening because she was possessed, right?
Now I really felt like, from Battlestar Galactica, there was this one director you would bring on board when you were going to kill a character, Michael Nankin. If Michael Nankin was directing the episode, the actors would grab their scripts with trembling hands because they're like, shit, maybe this is the one that I die in. And I've actually had a chance to talk to some of those actors discussing that. And one of them, Luciana Caro, and another one, Candice McClure, both directed by Michael Nankin, both died. And these are not the main characters, but the characters who stand behind the main characters. So occasionally they get cool story arcs, or sometimes you've seen them a bunch, and then there's one episode where you're like, this is how I was born, this is where I was raised, this is what it's like being me, and now I'm dead.
Yeah.
And so as they were doing this with Ariam, I was like, oh shit, that's why they recast. Because they're killing her. And that's why they didn't explain what she was in season 1, because it didn't matter. They didn't know what she was. Was she an alien? Was she a robot? Was she an alien robot? And at the beginning of season 2, they clarified, she is a human cyborg. It's like, oh, so either they need that information, because far be it from Discovery to make mythology they're not going to use immediately.
Yes.
It seemed from the very beginning like this was a goodbye Ariam episode. And I think they delivered on it in a way that when you build a universe filled with magical, mystical, incredible science, and you beam someone away when their leg has been damaged and they're starting to decompress their suit, you've established you can rescue someone who's been decompressed, and they just didn't bother to snap her out of the air and beam her onto the transporter pad?
To take control of her, to find a way to take control of her and see what...
Yeah, or, save her life, because she's a member of the crew.
And
sorry.
she's human. She's...
Yeah. We
she's
established in this episode that she's Robocop.
Yeah.
She's
and they did Robocop things.
Yeah.
All the images.
The Prime Directive takes over, and you're like...
No, but the image, as soon as I saw that image of especially when they showed the 3 Tilly and Detmer and Oku that little scene in the mess hall, I was like, this is so Robocop.
Yeah, Murphy,
it touched my heart. I felt very sad. Yeah, I instantly felt sad for her because you're sad for Robocop, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you tapped into that. I don't know if that's what they want. They probably wanted that. Exactly.
They felt they couldn't get her under control. I guess she was possessed. She was taken over by the
And
whatever it
would have
was.
been it would have been nice to see that conversation
Right.
where they decided that
Yeah,
she's too
because-
dangerous, let her die.
Wasn't it Michael in season 1 was almost like in space and then they just beamed her,
Yeah.
or she was
In
like
this-
'cause she had to.
In
she
this
was the
season,
one. She had to jump.
yeah,
the-
in this season, yeah. In fact, she had to jump from one
she had
place to
jump
another,
where
and
she
she
would
made
have
it
no be without atmosphere, and then
in the pilot.
and they
yeah.
saved her from that. So we
Yep.
know that that's possible.
Yeah.
I
And
felt
in
like there
this
was
season,
a lack of beaming all together in that whole scene. Like
yeah, there
when
were a
they-
lot of solutions where it's like
the security officer. I felt like, oh, they know her vitals. Like they didn't. Why not beam her off immediately?
I wondered why the
know.
captain didn't actually say, like, I never heard them say that they couldn't be beamed off, that they couldn't get their signals, right?
actually,
They beamed
in
them
fact,
there, okay.
In fact, he says,
close.
we're ready to beam you off if anything.
Yeah.
They actually say, he says that.
But they
Pike
didn't.
says that.
They
And then
didn't.
so I had that in my memory and then I'm like, I thought, why didn't they beam her off instant? I mean, there are other people on the bridge. They don't all have to look at that like a television. They should all be working.
Yeah.
They should all be doing jobs like beaming somebody off.
yeah,
when they're,
being ready
when
to
their
beam
vitals
someone
are
over. Yeah.
like
Flatlining?
gone to, gone to pot. So that was a little. I mean, I get why like the drama. I mean, we were judging it after the fact, but I definitely was like, I did think of that afterwards. I'm like, there's just beam. Like on the Orville, for instance, like they can't beam. So that's like
They can build that problem.
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So they can just do whatever, and then they like, oh, last episode, I was talking to somebody and they said, oh well, why don't they just beam the thing that canister into space or whatever? And I'm like, they don't have beaming. They don't have beam. And so it's a great problem. It's a great thing to have as a device. But then they could have beamed everybody.
Yeah, they had so many
I have to be
solutions
honest,
staring
I didn't
at them.
think of it. I didn't think of it. I was kind of wrapped
It's
up in
okay.
the drama.
But
You're
that's
not
okay.
a captain of a starship.
No,
And-
It's
and-
Pike's job. to think of that.
But also, but the drama did like
it got me.
get you. Like I can understand how people would forget that in the moment. And there are times in almost every Star Trek show where we think they should just do that,
Yeah.
and then they don't do this very thing that they could. I
Yeah,
remember
these
the
are
first
the things that bad filmmakers call refrigerator problems.
Right.
Where you don't think of it in the moment,
Yeah.
but then afterwards when you're getting something from the fridge, you're like, wait a second.
Yeah, yes.
They could have just been like, if you're a bad filmmaker, a bad storyteller, you build these refrigerator problems, and then you're like, shh, no one will know. If you're good at this, you find a solution
I
that
feel
makes
like
the
this
story
is the kind
work.
of thing that burns you afterwards. But
Yeah.
for sure, I remember the first time watching these. I remember for years saying, anytime somebody's acting out, just stun them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's so many times in Star Trek where somebody could just get stunned and everything would
Yeah.
be like sorted out, but nobody's ever stunned. There's just like a huge conversation, and then it's even worse in the end. And I remember the first time I was watching Deep Space Nine, and Dax was with Worf and another Klingon, and they were fighting so much, and she just boom, boom, stunned both of them.
Yeah,
and then
Indiana
they woke
Jones
up.
that problem.
And they woke up and they were like, "What happened? What did you do to us?" And she was just like, "Yeah, I took care of it." And I thought that was years,
Yeah.
years of watching episode after episode where no one
Before
did that,
somebody
and then all of a
finally thought
sudden,
of it.
yeah.
I love they gave it to Dax.
Now, looking forward into this storyline,
Yeah.
let's say 1,000 years or so, when in the short trek Calypso, we have a discovery that has become sentient. And it has a female way of emoting and a female way of speaking. I am wondering if there's any connection between what's left of Ariam's memories in the Discovery's databanks and the idea that the Discovery gains some kind of sentience in the future. And I'm wondering if Ariam is entirely dead. Because, granted, she's a cyborg, which means a bunch of her is a robot. If you were to take Murphy out of Robocop, you wouldn't have Robocop anymore. But you'd have a bunch of the stuff that was there. Sort of like in Avengers, when they're like, hey, we can take out the stone, and there's a bunch of vision left.
Yeah.
This idea that if you're a cyborg, you're a composite. And so, what do we think about the memories that are left on Discovery, and this Red Angel, and the fact that Ariam said that it all comes down to Michael?
I don't know, I was trying to figure it out. Is the Red Angel dead? Why did the Red Angels talk about Michael? Why is Michael the target? And I just want to say quickly, Ariam is out there. and it looked like she died.
Just floating in space.
Yeah, it looked like she died. But do we know if there's nobody on that installation? If there's nobody at the Section 31 HQ? I mean, I guess anything could happen, right?
It does seem a bit like all of the environmental controls have been switched off.
Yeah.
So anything that would have been alive, Control has killed.
Okay.
So
That
they
seems
didn't
good.
expressly say, hey, look, there are no life signs anywhere, we've combed the whole place, everybody's dead.
Okay.
But I think they kind of expect us to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I kept thinking about was the same thing that you were saying, is that if the essence of her are all those memories, then maybe she's like, that's her. What's left behind is what she actually is. What's on Discovery is what she actually is.
That's right.
And then like that's kind of her body, like her vessel for all of that. You know, there's really nothing else left. And yeah, I don't know, the Control thing, that kind of thing. It's like, well, is the threat gone now? You know,
Was Skynet defeated?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand like what is that the end, and then what's the whole overall arc for the story? Like, what's there to be stopped? Like, what's the Red Angel's job now at this stage? You know, I didn't really understand where that was going, but that's okay. That's okay. Restraint for an episode.
We've got 2 more episodes left.
We don't need all the pieces like in previous episodes where they're trying to pack in too much stuff. So I was okay with that. But I did wonder those things.
And where is the Red Angel? Who's going to embody the Red Angel next? Because I'm thinking it hasn't been resolved yet. The Red Angel is still around. And can I have one more question? Logic extremists came up again.
Yep.
Okay, and not unrelated to Michael and Spock, and so I'm thinking Patar was a logic extremist who had taken over Control.
In theory, had taken over control. And it was interesting that Cornwell just thought that was the scenario that had occurred. Because we came to learn that there was a scenario in which a logic extremist was given enough power that they could take over Section 31. Which strikes me as really terrible hiring.
Well, maybe it's very good political maneuvering.
It's hard
good
for
political
you to
maneuvering.
detect with Vulcans. Vulcans can work to conceal that.
And
kind
Patar
of
is a
thing.
Vulcan, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it was a great job to
course,
have
logic
Patar
extremists,
do,
forgive me,
right?
yes.
It made the most sense to have the human from Control never speak. Because having an Andorian and having a Tellarite and having a Vulcan speak to us, which I guess when Leland was talking to them, that was just holographic from Control. Because if we had the human speak and he sounded like a robot, we would have been like, oh, that's weird.
Oh, right.
But having the robot Vulcan, it's like kind of believable, especially when it's a
Because
shitty
they have
hologram.
a robotic. Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting choice, and the fact...
Except for Spock right now.
Yeah. Well,
And it made me think that Control was working with, I don't know, I thought maybe there's a connection between the Red Angel and Control, or...
they seem to be
area.
adversarial at this stage,
Yeah.
because if all of the things that Control is trying to do are being somehow intercepted by the Red Angel to stop the wiping out of all mankind, or all humanoid kind, then that pits Control and the Red Angel diametrically against each
Yes,
other
because
on that idea.
The Red Angel's doing almost everything in, like, that's the antithesis of that, yeah.
Of what? I thought the Red Angel was to be complicit in the wiping out.
It kind of seemed that way until it became clear that the thing the Red Angel is warning Spock about is the thing Control is trying to do. So it seems like the Red Angel is specifically against Control's wishes, which means it could be someone like Burnham or Spock who are totally aware of the situation, or someone like Ariam who has something to atone for, because we've already seen what happens when a probe is chucked into this thing that's a time vortex, and then it comes back a little bit smarter than it should have been because it's had 700 years to get advanced, V'ger style. And so I feel like unless the people running Discovery gave us that for literally no reason, there might be something where Ariam's body gets chucked into a time warp and comes out as the Red Angel.
Oh, I see.
Like, because she's technology.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
if you throw the technology into there, it would also explain why there is no evidence of Ariam existing in the Sung-type android storyline. So there's a lot of reasons why Ariam shouldn't really exist, She doesn't make sense with the data positronic net story. I get the idea that I lost an arm and I will get a robot arm to fix it. But this idea that you have been built from virtually human parts and turned into something that was in season 1 indistinguishable from a literal robot crew person. I feel like the reason they put this character front and center in this episode is so that they can make her into the Red Angel.
Right.
Okay.
That's my theory.
Ooh, that's a really good theory.
It is.
You like it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's almost knocking me off my Burnham theory. But you know what?
Almost.
I'm gonna write it out.
Why not? See where it goes.
Yeah, exactly. But it almost does it. That's really well because of the
Thank you.
Darn it. Because of the technology thing going to and it being changed. And that makes a lot of sense.
Because the first few episodes of this season had different showrunners, and then those showrunners were summarily fired from the show. So what was happening on New Eden was a great episode, but doesn't necessarily tie into what Kurtzman had decided is going to be the end game for this season. So what has happened since Kurtzman took over has been, okay, get this probe, make it into something magical. And he started to pull these strings that are kind of pointing in that direction, but giving the probe some kind of desires, giving it some kind of sentience was interesting, because that could be something that would happen with the inanimate body of Ariam. The human parts of her would not survive in space, you would assume, but she did have an exosuit on, which means she can't just survive in a zero vacuum at all.
Sorry to bring up the suit.
Yeah.
I feel like it should be modern enough, effective enough to have helped. What's the security officer? Not in that in the situation she was.
The idea.
I mean, because she doesn't breathe our oxygen, so I understand there might be, but I felt like that suit should be able.
She's basically just vaping. She's got little like vape things that go near her mouth, and
Don't
it was
call
a little.
her a douche. No, okay. Sorry.
I thought it was a little convenient in this episode.
Yeah.
When Star Trek is trying to be this serialized thing, where it's like, so, I hear you need those things to survive.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Convenient. We'll use that later.
I did like that she said, why are you asking?
Yes.
I did like that, because I was like, as a security officer, being like,
Yeah, and it was a great moment of tension when Burnham tells her to leave.
Yep.
Leave her alone with Ariam,
Yeah.
which Nan did not want to do.
Yeah.
Nan was very suspicious.
well, yeah,
She didn't know why.
Even on the
She
football field bridge,
Yeah.
which
I'm
is becoming seemingly smaller. Just
I don't know. There's room to lurk
But
and
exactly.
be completely unseen.
But that lurking was so strange to me, because the angle, it doesn't make any sense. It's like
it was a
She
real.
couldn't see the
It's almost
screen.
like you
It's
don't
like she
have
was
to
looking
lurk.
at the screen.
But she
like
doesn't
that.
have to lurk. She works there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was like.
But she can't hear her.
She can't see from the football
Yeah.
field other
Listen,
side.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to say something about the bridge. At one point, they were teasing Ariam, Detmer and Tilly were teasing Ariam, and the captain, nobody else noticed. At the top of their voices, they're having this fun conversation as friends. Nobody turns around or notices. Like,
Too far away to hear.
They're very far. It's true. They're still very far away. But that lurking, that kind of around the corner, I was like, is that her station? Like, is she hanging out there and just kind of peeking? Or is she really, truly lurking?
No, she's lurking, because her security station is like on the other
opposite
side. Yeah, or at least it has been. Like Rekha Sharma was hanging out over there, and then we had Tyler hanging out over there as a security. Security seems to be over there, and when she came over, that seemed to be where she was.
I was gonna be kind of irritated if they killed her
Yeah.
off already, because it's like another security officer.
Just keep wiping out the security officers.
Jeez, and a lady security officer
Again,
brown lady,
a brown lady security officer murdered every
but
time.
No, she did the
She
job.
made it.
She made like a Worf-like decision.
Yes.
You know, often Worf is like stopped from making that kind of decision, but she like jumped in there and did it. I thought that was good.
Yeah,
I think-
absolutely. And I like the fact that she got to wear her red suit. Because everybody else was wearing their like Discovery silver suits, but she's like, no, I brought this over from Enterprise. I'm gonna keep wearing it. Thank you very much. And so she was the one walking around in her little foil red suit still.
Yeah, I thought she did. I thought that was good. Like the only thing that I think would have been different is if like Spock fully convinced Michael to make that decision because he's been talking about that, and I was so glad that he said, yeah, you started the war. Okay, like, come on, like, finally somebody saying, like, clearly the Klingons were going to do whatever they were going to do without you doing that. It was so refreshing to hear Spock be like, okay, yeah, that's on you too, Michael. Your ego, you just need to be
let's talk about this sibling conversation that was going on.
I think he was saying to her, she developed a pattern of blaming herself for,
these things
from when she was a child.
These
that makes
massive
sense.
things
That's right.
that are out of her control.
Yes. And it can be irritating. I can see how Spock can be irritated by that because she doesn't just want to fix the things she thinks she's done wrong, but she's trying to fix him, and he didn't want to be fixed. And I like this emotional expressiveness of Spock. I really, really, really like it.
Yeah, and I think if anybody can make you forget you're a Vulcan, it's your irritating sibling.
Yeah.
And I've got to say,
that's so true.
Right?
That's
like,
funny.
you can be as cool as you want around people you've been working with in your 5-year mission, but that person who's been needling you since you were a child can get under your skin.
Yeah.
And so whether this is, yes, it's just sibling interaction, or whether this is still a version of Spock that giggles at a plant in Cage, who hasn't quite found the logic that you'll see him using all throughout the actual series of the original series and into the films, it'll be interesting to see, like, is there some transformation he has to undergo yet on camera? Or are we just genuinely terrible at being Spock?
No,
because Spock is not like this guy.
No.
And Peck is really cool. I like watching him, but this is still not Spock.
I think what happened was what he said to Burnham in the last episode was that when she left, what the pain he suffered was a catalyst for him to deny and repress his human side. Well, maybe he's just denied and repressed it too much. Because even of pure Vulcan, do you remember Sarek and Jean-Luc Picard in their mind meld in TNG? Well, there was a lot of emotion there. That
Because
Picard
he was sick.
He had, like, Vulcan senility going on.
Yeah,
but is that the only reason? I mean,
Yes.
Vulcans,
I think they
Vulcans are emotional
explained it as
people
that.
and they have to control it.
I
They
do
learn to
think
control it.
I think they did say Sarek in that situation. I really do think is because at that
of his
age,
senility.
at his
Unless
age,
it was just an excuse.
But I do think that I think why Vulcans are fascinated with humans is because they annoy them more than any. They get under the skin of Vulcans more than any other group probably.
Except maybe Romulans.
Maybe exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but on an emotional level, even if it's happiness, Tuvok goes through the same thing, you know, on Voyager, where it's just like it's like, oh, they just keep wanting me to feel all the time. You know what I mean? They want to be my friend. They want to be close to me.
How annoying. Yeah.
Exactly. And so with Sarek, I think it's probably a combination, an excuse to finally
let something out.
He has those proclivities anyway. He married a human like twice, right? Like so. Didn't he remarry?
Because the first person he married, or the first person he had a child with was a Vulcan princess. Then there was Amanda. Cybok. We can't forget the ugly stepchild no one talks about. Poor half-brother Cybok. Who then becomes like an emotion extremist, becomes a hippie.
I think if his name were better, it would be... anyway.
Cybok. Poor guy. I mean... I was setting the stage for naming people crazy things. Yeah, my sister's name is Michael. Totally normal.
Yeah, but I do think that's there anyway. But I do think Spock, even in his most logic, into the films and everything, he's always sassy. I think he always has that sassy kind of quality where they're like, what's that? Bones will be like, what were you doing there? And he's just like, nothing.
I'm totally logical.
Yeah, but he's totally... And so I do think that Peck is bringing out that part. That part is... He's setting the stage with that part of Spock, which is kind of, the cowboy diplomacy Spock.
What I think is less plausible than the Spock who has an outburst every once in a while because he has to let it out sometimes, is the warmth that was shown between him and...
Stamets.
Yeah. That was like weirdly sweet for him to be like that with a stranger.
Yeah, so that... I mean, I don't remember Spock ever being like that.
A therapist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not really Spock's bag. No.
Yeah, but he is kind of like that towards Picard. Like they have those kinds of conversations, that sensitivity kind of conversation on TNG. You know what I mean? Where they talk about, you know, and because of like the Tasha thing, like they do get into some.
As he got older, I mean, I'm thinking even in the first Star Trek movie,
maybe when Vulcans are young, they're a bit more snot nosed, and then when they're older, they're like willing to be. They're willing to be a little more emotional.
Maybe
more
less therapy, more wisdom. Yeah. Like it's like, I'm gonna impart this. If you're gonna like talk about my business, then I'm gonna talk about again, kind of being sassy, like. Oh, you're gonna get into my personal stuff. Well, I'm gonna get into your personal stuff, which he seems to be like, kind of like. This Spock seems to be a little spiteful. It's like, you know.
He's a bit pissed.
Yeah, he's a little spiteful. He's just like, okay, you know, he wasn't shitty about it, but he was just like, if you're going to get into my personal business, I'm going to tell you a couple things about your personal life, you know, to even the playing field, which he seems to want to do.
I thought it was totally measured. I didn't think it was crappy at all that he said that to Stamets.
No,
but to Stamets, I think it felt like weirdly kind and generous.
Yeah.
And to Michael, it was weirdly mean and angry. And I think, you know, maybe it's because there will be some transformation to Spock. But whatever it is, I am delighted to see Sonika having a scene partner that brings out some great performances.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. Sonequa Martin Green, like she's getting to do that stuff with Peck, and then her fight sequences have been really awesome.
You mean the wire fu kung fu fight scene we had in this episode?
I love it.
And that how but her jumping up and she's just she's really pulling those off. But yeah, her scene partner, like them together. That chemistry is really
working.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that fight scene for a moment. I mean, this is a Jonathan Frakes episode, and he is like making Star Trek tweaks here and there with like lighting feels more like Star Trek in certain scenes. Yes. We don't have like light shafts pouring through a window in some like Game of Thrones-y kind of way. It feels a little more like Star Trek for lighting. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the one thing he got excited about is this like gimbal camera thing that twice in this episode he had a scene begin upside down and then go right side up, and it was like, Johnny, like you're better than the toys you have. You're a really great director, and you're a great Star Trek director. But I feel like he's been able to bring some really lovely like human moments out in characters.
I just feel like, I feel like he probably has a lot of power on set, more than some of the other directors, definitely, and I feel like it lends to it better. The pep, like I was talking about before, of like how things move along, is there again. Like he honestly, he has that like knack of making the pacing really good.
And this episode was more than 50 minutes long, but it didn't feel like it.
It just zipped along. So he has that's a gift. And then I love that scene with Stamets when he kicks them out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're fine. You're fine. And that like pulling away when he's like, you're fine. It reminded me of that scene with Picard and that scientist when he was dating her and they're playing in the Jeffries tube, and then it kind of like pulls away. And I was like, oh, that is like very Star Trek to me. Like that got in there, and reminded me of other things.
He often, is it me or does he often start off an episode with an interesting camera angle? Like I know the one he did in one of the Voyager episodes for sure. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And you're like, Jonathan Frakes directed that song. Yeah, he just did something interesting with perspective. He likes to work with that. So
he does, and I think perspective was a little bit strange in some of the CGI in this because that felt like an enormous shuttle that Cornwall was on, or they've made Discovery smaller. Like, something about the size of that. It felt like the beginning of Calypso when this, like, crazy painted Starfleet vessel comes in with this, like, custom paint job and then has to throw the searchlight up on Discovery because it's running dark. Which, I don't know, is it just me or in the previous episode was, like, the final moment, I'm not been a fugitive for long, but I'd say we run, is what Spock said. So they immediately hide instead of run. Which is an interesting, like, it just wasn't, I expected to see, like, we're running by, like, warping somewhere. But this episode, I mean, the first choice of we should run and we should probably call an admiral. That was also an odd...
Especially since I thought that she would be even more suspicious, like, because because of like the last captain she had to deal with on Discovery. I felt like she kind of was like easy on Pike, but like I would have been like, oh, what's wrong with everybody? Everybody in the brig, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't trust
Stun.
Yeah, exactly. I don't trust any of you. But so I did expect a little. She's had a hard time with them. So
Yeah.
I'm like, of all
it's
the
like
admirals,
the delinquent ship. She constantly has to show up. It's like, I'm sleeping with this captain. Then I have to tell that one to apologize to that captain. And it's just like she's always having to wipe Discovery's ass. It must be exhausting.
She's like Mr. Belding, and she has to deal with Zach all the time. You know?
Like, and it's a rotating Zach. It's like, now Zach is Lorca. Now Zach is Pike. And next year it'll be... I'm hoping it's Matt Decker next year. Like, I hope they just keep bringing in these captains that we knew for one episode and then never really needed to hear from again.
Can I say something about the fight scene?
Yeah.
That fight scene. I just wanted to say, as a sensory experience, it was fantastic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Even sound-wise, I love the sound of the phasers they were using, whatever they were using right before they used them.
Yeah. They had like a capacitor charge sound to them that was fun.
The colors, the helmets, the light in the helmets against the darkness. I love that when the environmental controls were fixed.
Yep.
The people.
Yeah,
I
that was
just
really cool.
It was cool. I don't normally love fight scenes. And then Michael, of course. Oh my God.
I thought that she was great in the scene too.
Yeah.
Like the
Watching
emotion.
her get the shit kicked out of her, and yet she gets right back up, and I did love the Kirk hit.
Yes.
That she did that took him down like a gorn.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
That was great.
I mean, she's resourceful. We've seen that even in season 1. She's a resourceful fighter. You know what I mean? The first thing she sees that she can hit you with, she will hit you with. Yeah. If she's got on the ground, she will come back and get you. So you knew that even though Ariam's like a cyborg, she was going to be a challenge.
And thank goodness Michael had like EVA gloves. Like she was wearing something that she could punch a cyborg with.
Yeah.
Because otherwise that fight would simply not have worked
But
if
even
it was
that
robot
hurt her.
versus human. And even then it hurt. But it was like doable, you know?
But I understood, like, as long as she took and was not taking orders, but that's hard. It's hard to just be like, oh, I'm just gonna airlock my friend.
Yep, just send her out.
If it was, yeah.
That was tough. It was good to watch, although I must say, in this episode, I think Ariam had some of the worst makeup we have ever seen on her. Because she often has like a line or two, and her lips seem to match her dialogue.
Yeah.
But in this one, it felt like every time we were on a close-up of her talking, she looked like a marionette from Team America World Police. Like, her lips just like, hi, Michael. It was just like the way her mouth wasn't like, it's like the spirit gum wasn't like connected to her lips properly. And it was a close-up. And like every time we saw her, it seemed disappointing because that makeup has looked great in the past in a medium shot. But then when you zoom into her eye and you start to see where the latex starts and ends, and you're like, okay, well, if that's human skin, then why is it black?
Well,
like,
she does have human skin because it's like eyelashes too. She has eyelashes.
And I feel like it's leaning into Tim Burton's Batman a little bit hard when you just have to paint the eyes black. Because, like, if that's her human skin, it'd be kind of neat to see that it's scarred and damaged.
Yes.
You know, like, if we're telling the story that she's a human inside of this Robocop outfit, it'd be nice to see a little bit of skin there instead of just black painted.
And in fact,
face.
I hope she comes back for that reason. I want to know that story. I want to see what happened to the human, whatever her name was. We don't know if it was Ariam.
No, I guess it might have been.
Might have been.
But it'd be maybe she has a first name and Ariam is her last name, and all her friends call her that because they're mean. I don't know.
I know.
Like, it'd be kind of weird if your closest friends call you by your last name.
Well, they call Detmer. Like Tilly said.
But they call
Detmer.
Michael.
Or Burnham. Do they ever call her Burnham?
Yeah, Pike
captain
calls her
does-
Burnham.
just the captain.
Pike
Her
calls her
close
Burnham.
friends
Pike
don't.
and Sarah.
Yeah, her close friends call her Michael.
Tilly called Detmer this episode.
It just
So,
happens sometimes.
I don't even know Detmer's
sometimes
first
it
name
just
either.
works. Kayla.
Because Ariam says it on the way
Yes.
when they're leaving.
And what does she say back to her?
No, she says something about "don't forget us," or
Yeah, that's
something
right.
like
Now
and
that you're...
and then Ariam says, or something like, "Oh, I don't.
I'll try not
to, Kayla."
Maybe she's like Super Mario, where his name is clearly Mario. Because if there's a Mario Brothers, it must be Luigi Mario and Mario. So maybe her name is
So
Ariam.
Yeah, she called her Kayla, and that was weird. All of a sudden it's like you're hearing her first name, but earlier Tilly called her Detmer.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think they probably switch in between their last names and their first names.
Yeah, sometimes
each
he's
other by their
Geordie.
last names.
Sometimes he's Geordie.
Sometimes he's
LaForge.
LaForge. Yeah, that's true. Like Riker used to go between Geordie and LaForge quite a bit. But, you know, who knows?
So let's start talking about whether this show was Star Trek or not. Because there are parts of it that we seem to have enjoyed.
Yes.
There are parts of it that felt like they may have come up short, or were like Battlestar Galactica did this better 10 years ago. If you're trying to be Game of Thrones level of serial storytelling, you're missing it. Because like we should have known Ariam's backstory
Before this.
like a while ago, possibly a year ago. This is the sort of stuff we should have known about. You should have planned. And we also need to bear in mind that behind the scenes, Discovery has been a complete shit show. They have chewed up and spit out 5 showrunners. This has been very poorly managed. But that doesn't mean the show itself is bad Star Trek in and of itself. Because a lot of people come in and out of show running seasons of Star Trek. So, Vanya, would you say this episode was Star Trek or just like entertaining television?
Me first?
Yeah.
I think this, to me, it was both entertaining and Star Trek.
Okay.
I mean, it's not conventional Star Trek, but it's new Star Trek. With like, it has the elements of being a Star Trek episode. I thought for the most part, people were quite competent. I felt like that it had a message of love and compassion, understanding, that I thought was good. And it reminded me of a Star Trek episode, but it was like a new way of telling the story. So to me, it tracked it, and it was a good episode, and I cried.
Oh, nice.
And then crying is not a requirement for a Star Trek episode.
I cry with every episode of Star Trek. That's
but
pretty normal.
But I did cry. But I did cry, and it got me. And you're right. It is late for them to be building these characters. Like we kind of were begging them to build like that family dynamic, that friend, and they did it really fast in this episode. I do think it was effective, but I hope they don't continue to do this thing where if they're gonna kill somebody or like have them go through something heavy, that we learn everything about them in one episode.
Yeah, like the moment we meet Detmer's boyfriend in a flashback, she's dead.
Yeah, or at least if they're gonna have somebody go through something heavy, like I hope that it's tighter, like the cast is tighter, so we know about them and we know that they care about them. We don't have to show that they have a good time or that they care about each other in one episode. They just have already done it, so that we're prepared and attached to the characters ahead of time.
Yeah, let's build character because we want to see characters, not because we want to kill characters.
Yeah, and I would say that's to me the biggest flaw of the episode, regardless of all the other things that we talked about. That would probably be the biggest flaw. But it's always been a flaw of Discovery's, in my opinion, since season 1. But I still will say it tracked it.
Okay. Sonia, did it trek it or wreck it?
Well, I feel like when we say that it wrecked it, that we're trashing it. Right? And I don't want to.
There can be good episodes of television that are not Star Trek. Like a really great Law and Order episode will wreck it, but it's still a great episode of Law and Order.
So I enjoyed this episode very much, even though there were some holes in it. We've all talked about them. But I didn't. It doesn't feel like a Star Trek episode to me, even though it was directed by Jonathan Frakes, and and you're gonna ask me why, but I can't tell you exactly. I felt actually there was a lot more happening in it than I would have wanted, and maybe the potential problems with serializing Star Trek have come out a little more in this episode. Again, I'm disappointed that Ariam was the way that she was. We didn't know more about her, and that she's gone already. I wasn't convinced by, that storyline with the logic extremists taking over control. So that could be really interesting, and there wasn't enough of it for me.
Yeah, we've just sort of gone into the AI story just in time to end the AI story.
Yes, so that was frustrating. Like they did. That's how an episodic show can really make that work. But again, I did love it with Star Trek in that the relationships were fleshed out and we got to see them. We got to see chemistry between the characters. I enjoyed that thoroughly. But I have to say, science-wise and science-wise, and storyline-wise, it wrecked it for me. Sorry.
I'm like,
All right.
say it.
Yeah.
Say it.
Yeah, Sonia, I've got to agree. This show, it was almost like it didn't know it was Star Trek. It's like Jonathan Frakes forgot every trick that every Star Trek captain has in order to make this story shoehorn into Discovery. This episode was a bad episode of television and was a bad serialized part of a serialized story. If it was old school Star Trek, it would have been bad. If it was some kind of new attempt to serialize Game of Thrones style, it would have been bad. Everything about this episode, I think, was really, really bad television.
Wait a second.
I could not, like, as I was watching this, I was like, that doesn't sit well. That doesn't sit well. Why did they make that choice? And I was constantly, those refrigerator problems that bad filmmakers make, I was having them before I got to the refrigerator. I was having them while I was watching it. It's like Jonathan, this is the first time I think I have personally ever wrecked a Jonathan Frakes episode.
That's right.
But this episode was not good. I felt them cranking that story so hard. I could feel that wheel churning. It was not good. The way they set up the previous episode, you should be able to hit right into this next one. You should binge watch this and feel like, yeah, what they're doing there, they're now doing here. And they had ground it to a halt. And I feel like they set up a character just to kill the character.
You know what?
That's bad. That's bad, obvious episodic storytelling from 15 years ago. Battlestar Galactica was doing it. And it was good then, but it was obvious then. Which means for a sophisticated audience now, you're telegraphing this stuff a mile away.
I do agree with you. Like, I mean, for Battlestar, actually, it's better because they built the character. You liked the character a little bit more. And also, people died faster because the pilots constantly fighting Cylons, they're going to die quicker. We're going to be like, oh, we know that person's name, and then they're going to be gone like the next episode. And sometimes we didn't even learn anything about them, which I feel like is more realistic in that kind of storytelling because it's like, well, they're expendable enough that we didn't even get to learn anything about them. We're going to kill them anyway. And that was kind of the cool thing about Battlestar. I do agree. It is a flaw. It doesn't change my mind, but I do agree. It is a flaw.
The writers did write it that way, and I think what they missed, because I agree with some of what you said, Matt. What they missed was a chance to really focus on Spock. Like, it's like Spock was finally found and cured,
and he
he's
gets
just
two
hanging
scenes.
He gets 2 scenes, and he's helping fix one of the whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, that's cute, but I want to see Spock struggle. This is a big deal. He's connected to the main storyline. He and Michael and I just felt that was thrown away. I think this would have been a good episode if they had very like 1 or 2 storylines and really focused in on just that, figuring that out. Like, there have been some past Star Trek episodes where you don't see a lot of the main characters, right? It just works.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have worked better, been more satisfying.
And here's a weird little nitpick, but every time someone gets on that ship who is a Star Trek, like genuine Star Trek character that is a Starfleet officer, they very quickly go over to the replimat and get a new outfit made. Pike got himself into that band uniform as quickly as possible. The moment Burnham got onto Discovery, Lorca had her a new costume made. Like, why is Spock still wearing that? He's a Starfleet officer.
That is a good point, but I mean, I feel like he's still kind of like under the sick quality, you know.
So he's still in his PJs?
Yeah.
Just chilling?
Yeah.
He's in his smoking jacket?
Yeah. I mean, even though Tyler got a uniform like almost right away.
Tyler was out of his evil dentist costume like that.
I love that costume. I love all the costumes. You'll never change my mind about that. But
I love JoJo's. I just want to say from last episode.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the costuming. Yeah, that was that. But I feel like, you know, he's still kind of in a like, I'm in my sick bed kind of like situation.
He's still convalescing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, he's not wearing his tracksuit like he's a Vulcan. He's not wearing a tracksuit like Culper, but he's still kind of like, he still has the beard. I feel like
as soon as he
shaves, we're gonna get the whole exactly. But right now he's just kind of like, I'm just still figuring things out. I'm not exactly stable. You know what I mean? And shows that by knocking over the chest. He's like...
Unless this is all a calculation. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to get something out of Burnham in the way that Burnham was trying to get something out of him.
Doing a Hamlet? You think he's pulling a Hamlet?
He's faking madness?
Yeah. Is that what you think?
I don't know. But do you guys think from here on out we will see Section 31 get into the groove that they should be, where they're a secret organization? Are the admirals going to be like, oh man, Skynet tried to take over. Let's blow up Section 31. And Section 31's like, yes, let's blow us up. Shh. Secret.
That would be
it would be nice.
It would. I mean, now that everybody knows,
and all the people in charge of it are dead.
Everybody on that bridge knows where the coordinates to how to get to the headquarters.
Which I gotta say is kind of a cool idea that it's hidden in a penal colony that you'd never.
But now they all know.
But what happened? I want to know what happened.
That the AI just decided to wipe everybody out, and that's all we're gonna hear about it. It's a little.
Come on.
And now the question is, Leland was going to be in deep shit. And Giorgio was like, I'm looking forward to you getting a slap on the wrist by Control. And now, we didn't even see them in this episode.
Yep.
So will Giorgio just be stuck with Leland because there's no boss above him to chastise him?
I mean, I'm not so concerned about her being stuck with anybody. She'll just kill anybody that she wants to kill. That character, it will not be hard for her to just poison his tea one day.
Yep.
She's not gonna have any scruples about it. She's not gonna be like, well, I'm really gonna miss him. Oh wait, or she's not gonna be like, wait, sorry, don't drink that and knock it out of his hand. She's gonna be like, yeah.
And the old showrunners loved the actor who plays Leland, and that's why they hired him.
Oh, okay.
And now those showrunners are gone, so I think Leland's gonna find his way out of an airlock.
Well, it would actually be kind of fun if he is there and there is a struggle between them. If in the new show, if there's a struggle that is for that kind of empire thing that she's used to, where she has somebody that she needs to ice.
Now, on the topic of ice, we've now seen in this season an Orville airlocking and a Discovery airlocking. Compare and contrast.
I can't remember the Orville one.
In the Orville, it was a robot who decided to airlock a human. In this one, it was a human who airlocked a robot. So, what do we think about watching Ariam die? Did it feel impactful in the way that random orange shirt on the Orville in Identity Part 2 got chucked out and we were like, oh no, that guy we just met?
Well, you didn't really feel bad for him. Well, I'm not going to speak for everybody. But I feel like, for me, I didn't really feel bad for the guy that got airlocked. I felt bad for Mercer.
Yeah.
Jeez, it's just 1 week. I've already forgotten his name.
Who that Seth MacFarlane guy?
I was so angry at Orville last week. Apparently, it's still sitting
Blocked
with
it
me.
out.
Mercer. I felt bad for Mercer because I feel like that was really to punish him. And in this, I felt bad for both Ariam and then everybody else that friended her. That had
Befriended her?
Befriended her. It's not Facebook.
It's not Facebook, yeah. Although she's basically a robot, so they just hit the friend button. Like.
Apparently, Non did not. Thumbs
down from Non. Yeah.
Sorry, but I felt more impacted by that. I mean, I felt bad for Mercer, too. But just in a different way. I mean, the whole girlfriend thing really got to me.
Yeah? Okay. Which airlock did you like better?
Well, I don't know if I liked one or the other better. So I did feel bad for Mercer. But in this case, with the case of Ariam, I didn't feel bad for Nan, actually, because, Nan was also...
doing what she had to do.
Yes, that's right. But I think visually, it wasn't the Ariam one wasn't as impactful as it could have been because she got pulled out, right? She got sucked out. And then the next image of her was from far away.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have liked to have seen it close up. I would have liked a chance maybe to see a little more human reaction.
To watch human eyes
maybe.
freeze over, whatever it is about her. Because we've had close-ups of her face. And I really thought there was going to be a mirror at some point where we'd see her die in the close-up.
Because it freaks me out. The thought of getting lost in space without a suit freaks me out. And so...
Even with a suit is terrifying.
Yes. So that didn't... But I wasn't terrified.
I feel like in Orville, they had to make him all blue and so that it would be more impactful because it wasn't that...
Yeah.
We don't know that guy. Yeah. And then with Ariam, I feel like then everybody would just say, "Oh, they tried to push it to make it seem more dramatic." If we saw her,
Oh my God! All they were doing was pushing to make it seem more dramatic in this episode.
but then
so
that
I
would
don't
just
think
be
it would
another thing on the list. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I'm kind of like, I don't mind it being far away. I was still impacted by everybody else's reactions. I feel like it would have been more exploitive to have that close up on her face, which is, I think, what Orville did. They were like, we're going to exploit this because it's not enough.
Now,
you know
does
what I mean?
not having that give you any more pause about whether she's actually dead?
Yeah.
If there was a close-up, would you have been like, yep, she's dead?
Well, there was enough of a close-up near the end, Matt, that you could see things starting to freeze over. You could see slowly starting to freeze
Yeah.
over. So, I thought,
I wonder what was freezing, though.
just
I
her
guess a
helmet
bit of
was.
moisture.
Her helmet wasn't.
Yeah.
What she did, remember, she did something to her helmet so that she couldn't survive.
Yes.
When
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
doing. So that
Which
means
was like
she
more
could-
story cranking.
Yeah,
she was
because
like
could-
desperately
does that mean-
trying to
that means-
explain.
That means she might have survived if she hadn't done that thing to her helmet. So how do we know?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I do think, you know, I think maybe, like what we were talking about, like, you know, getting her body back, that sort of thing. Maybe then there will be some speculation of who she actually is.
How much of her is
What
the
is
human?
her? Yeah, exactly. And so the distance also, there's no complete, like, there's not a complete solidifying thing about her death because of that distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that might be something that could be played.
There are
in
enough
later.
science geniuses on this ship to
Yeah.
start extracting memory files, and I
Yeah.
think there'll be some playing with Ariam. We'll see.
I hope to see on Discovery a little more exploring at some point. And I feel like
Yeah,
they
it'd be
don't
nice to
get
discover some stuff.
Yeah.
That one episode where they discovered the orb was pretty cool.
Yeah.
A bit mismatchy,
Yeah.
but it was pretty cool. And so I'm hoping we get into some more discovery.
Yeah,
We've got
and-
2 episodes left in this season, and we've got 4 left in the Orville.
I don't think I really don't.
It's
think
not going to happen this season, I don't think, Matt.
in Discovery. There's going to
No.
be any more, like, because
They have to
of
finish
the
story.
arc that they're going through. I don't think that I feel like when we saw in, like, New Eden and that was Discovery, but we also saw that it was connected to the Red Angel. I don't think we're gonna discover much more stuff.
No, the serialized aspect of this is really robbing us of the we're going to go discover something aspect that Discovery could have and sort of is built into the name.
But people complain about that with DS9
DS9,
too.
that's right.
Everybody complains. Anybody
But
who's
it's a
like
space
a hater,
station. Anyone who's
there's a setup.
expecting to go to strange new worlds, when you're sitting in a space station, that part isn't going to happen daily.
Yeah,
Strange
that's
new
what
worlds
I'm
come to
saying.
you.
And the same criticisms, like people that say that they didn't like Deep Space Nine, they say, "Oh, I just read it the other day." It's like this candidate or somebody in the United States. There was a whole write up of her, Stacey Abrams, in the New York Times, talking about how big of a Star Trek fan she was, and she went on and on about it. How, you know, that TNG was her favorite show, but her favorite captain is Janeway, kind of like
fair.
you. And she said she liked Deep Space Nine, but not as much because it wasn't Trek, because they weren't trekking anywhere. I mean,
It was like Starset.
I'm just kind of like, whatever.
If I can make one small complaint about Discovery, because it seems every time we bitch about something, like you should have
What
captain's
more
logs,
small?
and now there's captain's logs. Like,
yeah.
I do not give a shit about the name of your episode, because you never show it to me. And the thing that happens at the beginning of the break from commercial is the name of the episode. And I'm always looking up the name of this episode, and this particular one, Daedalus Project, is really what I think the next episode should probably be called.
Yeah.
Because
Well, because maybe they'll actually talk about Project
maybe they'll
Daedalus
actually get around to it.
Like, get into it.
Yeah, but I think we used to love the name of these episodes, and I could tell you the name of the TNG episode where this happened, or the DS9 episode where that happened. But the moment the episode is done, the only one I've remembered this year that mattered at all was New Eden. And everything else, like, I don't care about the names of these episodes, but I do care about the Orville ones, because they put them on the screen. So maybe, just think about it. They went back and put the word Star Trek on seasons 1 through 3 of Enterprise. So revise that if you have the chance.
You like that? You like the?
I want to see the title of the
title
episode
card.
come up.
Yeah.
At the beginning of that.
I do like that. Like the logs.
It's
I
a little
really
bit of
do like
Star
it.
Trek
It
DNA
is a bit, yeah, it
that's
gives-
missing.
Yeah,
Make
and
it so,
actually,
Discovery
and
producers.
actually, people that are new to Star Trek that are watching it, I think they would actually appreciate it. I think they would think it was kind of cool. You know what I mean? And that you learn the name of the episode. I remember,
And that name might have some relevance.
Yeah.
Because when these names aren't told to us, it's like they don't matter. It may as well be
Right.
called episode 209.
They had a great title from last season, and I would love to see it. What's past his prologue, which is like Shakespearean, and I thought that would, it would be kind of cool. And then
Context
you
is for
could kind-
kings.
yeah,
Like, there are some good names. If you're going to dig deep and come up with some highfalutin
yeah,
name,
use it.
friggin' show me.
Yeah.
Because just seeing it on the app that I'm watching it on is not enough.
Yeah.
And there are people watching this on television who never even see the name because they don't even have to click the button.
Yeah, I
So
agree. Like,
I
that
think that's
would
that's
be
Star Trek
cool.
DNA that's missing.
That would be much cooler.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
sure.
So, Star Trek Discovery, be cooler. That's the moral of this story. Anyway, we are going next week to be able to trek it or wreck it against an Orville and Discovery. We will see more about Project Daedalus next week, and we'll get back on board with Mercer. It's going to be exciting. See you guys then.